Hello and welcome to an emergency stopgap, less than ideal, but the best we could do under the circumstances episode of Lexitecture. This is a podcast about etymology, word origins, and history. My name is Ryan, and normally my co-host Amy and I each bring a new word to the table for each episode and talk about what we learned. If that seems like the kind of thing you'd be interested in, if you ever get excited about learning how some weird or totally normal word came to be, this might be the show for you. Today's episode, Cursed Cursive. Hi everybody, before we get started, just a quick apology for changing things up on you this week. Life happened, and so Amy had some things that needed her attention badly this week, so you are left with me. We won't do this very often, we try not to do it at all, but we hope you'll bear with us from time to time as things happen, and coordinating podcast recording schedules on either side of the Atlantic can be tricky. So it may happen in the future, and hopefully you'll bear with us if it does. So all of that said, we should get started. Shout out to my friend Kyle this week for coming up with today's word. An interesting thing about doing a podcast like this and having your friends find out about it is that people come up with little etymology homework assignments for you, which I love, because if I didn't like doing this kind of nerdy stuff, I wouldn't be doing it. Anyway, one day Kyle and I were talking, and he asked, what is the deal with the word cursive? As in cursive writing, the fancy handwriting that people don't even really bother learning anymore, because who writes by hand anyway? The obvious question is, does it have anything to do with cursing? For Simpsons fans, you'll remember a time when Bart was transferred to a new school and his English teacher was asking him if he is familiar with cursive, and he proceeds to list off a bunch of swear words before being stopped, and the teacher then clarifies and says, no, cursive handwriting, or script. And of course, Bart has no idea what he's talking about. And it occurred to me when Kyle asked me that I didn't actually know the origin of that either. So I said I would look it up and get back to him. And I did look it up and get back to him, but I thought it was interesting, so I thought I might share it with you all this week. So cursive comes from, originally from the Latin currere, to run. And the connection there is that as you write in cursive, of course you're using the pen or pencil, and your hand just sort of runs along the page. The letters all run together in a flowing motion, and that flow is where it gets its name of cursive. It was first written down in English not actually that long ago to refer to English writing, but it also referred back further than that to ancient manuscripts. And the one interesting little fun fact tidbit is that the ancient manuscripts, the two styles of writing, were cursive, which is sort of a slightly less formal way of connecting the letters in Greek or Latin. Smaller letters, a little bit tougher to read maybe, but they kind of flowed together in a similar way to what English flows together now when you're writing in cursive. The other style was called uncial, Uncial, which actually comes from a Latin word meaning 1/12. And so that was when they had the big letters and they were all blocked off together and each one was separate from the other. And that was used in more formal writing settings, more formal portions of manuscripts, which is interesting because it's kind of the opposite now. You think of printing, you think of a little more colloquial, kids do it, it's a little bit easier and it's easier to read. But it's weird that English would have developed, or Western culture maybe, would have just developed to the point where the type of writing that's harder to read is the stuff that we think of as being a little more formal, whereas you think if something's a little more formal, maybe it's a little more important that you understand it, so it should be written in letters that are easier to understand, but who knows how these things happen. What it does not relate to, the word cursive, that is the word curse, which has a slightly interesting history on its own. The word curse first shows up, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, in about 1050-ish AD. So we're talking, a significantly long time ago. One of the things that leapt out at me is that the word curse, as in a curse, putting a curse on someone, is older by 1 or 2 centuries than the verb curse, to curse someone. Sometimes you'll hear people complain about verbifying nouns and how you shouldn't do that in proper writing. If it's a noun, it should stay a noun. You shouldn't use that to create a new verb, which I think is kind of silly. And it turns out it's a silly thing to complain about because it's literally 1,000 and change years old at least, because in the very early 11th century they had the noun curse, and then to curse someone came along a little while later. You think of modern examples like texting, or you hear people say, I'll Facebook you, or I'll Snapchat. I don't know, is that a thing? I don't use Snapchat. But I'll message you. What's I'll message you seems weird. Formally, you'd think I will send you a message, but I'll message you. I'll text you is even shorter, and people kind of maybe sometimes get their backs up a little bit if they're a little bit too stingy and finicky, and they complain about verbifying nouns. But no matter what anyone tells you, the process of turning a noun into a verb when you use that noun to do a specific thing is super, super old, older than a lot of words in English anyway. So it's been around almost as long as English has. Another interesting thing about curse is that it is those three great words in the OED of unknown origin. It comes from a late Old English word spelled C-U-R-S, and one of the notes the OED has on it and other places that I've tried to find a previous history is that there's actually no equivalent word in form and sense in either Germanic, Romantic, or Celtic languages. So the three kind of main language families that English tends to draw from don't have anything that even could be the history for this word. So it seems to suggest this is one of those ones that someone was just casting around for a good, strong way to tell someone how angry you are with them. You think of I need a word to invoke in order to tell someone that I wish evil on them. You say curse. It's just a good, strong, hard word to say, I guess. And it seems like that's the best assumption anyone can make, is that someone just came up with it one time, sometime in the first millennium AD, probably, and then eventually it got written down in about 1050. And then there it went. C-U-R-S, curs. You may be tempted to think cur as in the dog. Maybe it's got something to do with calling someone a dog or something like that. And that is a really old way to insult someone, I guess, if you don't like dogs or if they don't like dogs. But it's not actually connected. The word cur comes from a whole other line, mostly Scandinavian, of words that just mean dog. And to call someone a dog is just to try to debase them, but nothing to do with curse. Different word altogether. So yeah, that's kind of how this works. We go from cursive back to curse and no further, but no actual connection between the two words, just to run or to curse someone. So that's it for this week's shortened and lonely episode of Lexitecture. Apologies again for changing it up, and I'm sorry that you had to listen to the far less interesting half of our co-hosting team, but all things going well, Amy and I will be back to sharing the hosting duties next week, and everything will go on from there. If you do like this show, please subscribe. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever else you go pod hunting. And if you do use iTunes or even have it, it really helps if you give us a rating and a review on there. It just lets Apple know that there are people out there who like listening to us, and that helps them share it with the rest of them. If you had any questions or comments about anything you heard today, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Lexitecture. We're on Twitter at the same handle, just look up Lexitecture. Or you can email us at words@lexitecture.com. You can drop by our website and leave a comment on one of the episode posts there. All manner of ways to get in touch with us, so please do drop us a line. Let us know you're out there, and if you like what you hear, please tell your friends and let them know. So thanks very much for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.